Good day, everybody, and welcome to our last session of week 5, Life Mastery. This was supposed to be a Life Mastery session with Armida. Unfortunately, Armida is not going to be able to be with us today. Armida's grandmother is 105 years old, living down in Florida, and her health has taken a little bit of a turn for the worse. So last minute, Armida got the call from her father that her grandmother wasn't doing well, and the family is meeting down in Florida to spend some time with her grandmother there. So Armida sends her apologies. We send Armida her best, and she'll be back with us next week. So you've got me this week. And clearly, we're not going to be doing a life mastery session today. I thought we'd talk about sales performance, one thing that I'm passionate about, and I'll say what it is to drive sales performance and what it is to be a sales professional from that point of view. So I'm gonna talk about that today. I've got my Team Canada, what I'll say, sweat top on, because our girls went for the gold today in the soccer, which was just an incredible, you want to talk about performance. They've been there in the medals over the last 4 Olympics. They've been attempting to get gold. They've always run into what I'll say the American team that's kind of derailed them in the last little bit. Going to the gold, they were never able to get to the gold game, so they've won bronze the last 2 or 3 Olympics, and they beat the Americans the other day to qualify for the gold medal game. And this time around, they ended up winning. So I'm wearing that today to honor our soccer team as well, too. So I want to talk to you today about sales performance. I absolutely love talking about sales performance. Spent a long time dealing with a lot of different salespeople, helping them, a lot of different organizations, helping them. And so thought we'd have that kind of conversation today. And there's a number of reasons why I'm very passionate about it. First and foremost, when I got into sales, I'll say some almost 40 years ago now, or I'll say a little under 40 years ago now, I fell into sales, of which probably more than 95% of all people that are in a sales career, or sales is their career, or sales is how they earn their living right now, fall into it. Very few people, I'll say, grow up and sitting around the kitchen table saying, hey, I want to become a salesperson. People say they want to become a doctor. People say they want to become a firefighter. People say they want to become an engineer. People say they want to become an architect, a whole bunch of other different professions. But very few people literally stick up their hand and say, hey, I want to become a salesperson. Yet it is a profession. It is absolutely a profession, just like engineering, just like being a doctor, just like being a lawyer, just like being an architect from that point of view. And it needs to be done in a professional light as well, too. I was in sales, as I said. I fell into a sales career for about 10 years. Or I'll say I fell into it to start, and I was, quote unquote, in sales, earning my income as a salesperson for about 8 or 9 years, with a fabulous company that allowed me a tremendous opportunity to grow, not only as an individual, but also as a salesperson as well, too. And make a long story short, we grew a business over 10, 11 years from about $45 million in sales to just shy of $950 million in sales. And there were some very specific things that we did. So I wanted to share that with you. The other is when I left that opportunity, because it was time for me to leave that opportunity and move into other things. And that's when I really started my own, what I'll say, entrepreneurial career. When I first, I'll say, hung my shingle, I hung it out as a sales trainer. And there was really 2 reasons why I wanted to do that. First and foremost, I had been through a number of sales training, what I'll say, situations / courses to that point. And I came to what I'll say 2 conclusions just around sales training in general. Number one, a lot of the programs that I went through had a sales philosophy of something that you do to the prospect as opposed to something you do with the prospect. And I really didn't like that. From my perspective, I wouldn't want that done to me. So I don't think I want to do it to other people. So I always had a lot of hard time with that. The other is pretty much all the sales training we went through evaporated pretty quickly, and nothing really stuck and nothing really got into the culture, or at least not into what I'll call our sales culture. And so I wanted to change that as well too. And that's actually a very interesting comment, even till today, even right now, currently 2021. I don't know the numbers for 2021 because we haven't concluded it yet, but I do know the numbers for 2020. And over $20 billion is spent on sales training in North America, year in, year out. It has for the last 20, 25 years. Think about that. $20 billion is spent on training salespeople in North America. And the interesting thing about that is over 95% of that training evaporates within 45 days. And there's a number of reasons for that. We'll talk about some of those today, but we certainly won't get through all of them. And so I had a lot of what I'll say compassion and a lot of passion to help salespeople, because I found most salespeople were trained how to sell the way the Wright brothers were trained how to fly, through crashes and burns. And that clearly teaches us what not to do as a salesperson. It doesn't teach us what to do. And so I found that there was a lot of sales professionals out there who knew exactly what not to do on a sales call, but didn't really know what to do on a sales call. And that didn't leave them feeling very confident, or what I'll say, empowered walking into those meetings. The other side of that, which again, I had a lot of compassion and passion to help salespeople with, was a lot of salespeople moved from opportunity to opportunity. They started a sales opportunity and they didn't get into the success they'd anticipated. They didn't get into the success as fast as they'd wanted. They didn't earn the income that they thought they would earn. And so they leave to, quote unquote, go try to find that someplace else. And I would always say to salespeople, yes, the grass is greener on the other side when you go and start a new or another sales opportunity, but it is tougher to chew because you have to start all over again, whether it be in the same industry, whether it be in a different industry, whether it be with a different company and a different industry, or whether it just be with one of them. And so I wanted to, what I'll say, train salespeople and help salespeople become more successful, more professional, faster, so that they could stay where they are. Because I saw it having negative effects, not only on their own, what I'll say, personal lives and mindset, but also within their family and within their relationships as well too. And so when I left my job, that's what I started. I hung my shingle out as a sales trainer, and I had a lot of fun with it. And we went from there. The business, what I'll say, morphed from a sales training company into a sales performance management company once I started to understand the difference between what I'll say selling skills and quote unquote sales performance. And that's what I really want to talk to you about today, and walk you through what that looks like, whether you're in sales, whether you've got a business and you've got salespeople selling for you, whether you're in business, you've got salespeople selling for you, and you do some selling on your own as the business owners. I want to walk you through some of that and kind of help you with that.
On a scale of 1 to 5, would you give yourself a 5 on achieving what you want in life? If your answer is anything less than a 5, right now, I have something awesome for you. Achieving your goals and living your life at a 5 isn't easy. Most people aren't prepared to focus, stay disciplined, and do the everyday work that is necessary to achieve amazing results. But since you're watching this, then I'm guessing that you're not one of those people. And this is an opportunity that will change your life. Give to Get is a global program that brings together world-class coaching and combines it with empowering masterminds and networking opportunities. We provide 5-star guidance for the price of a cup of coffee a day. To find out more, click on the link in the description of this coaching session.
So I'm going to, what I'll say, unpin me here, bring up my screen, and we'll start to walk through a little bit of a process there. Oh, what happened there? We're going to stop doing that, and we'll try that again. Here we go. So first and foremost, I want to talk about where product knowledge sits, because there's an interesting dynamic that goes on in selling when it comes to product knowledge. Let me just see here, and we are good there. Sorry. Here's the interesting thing about product. Here's the interesting thing about product knowledge. You're going to ask most salespeople, and most salespeople are going to tell you that product knowledge is absolutely critical to their success as a salesperson, to the point where they believe it's more than where 50% of their success comes from. And that's not entirely true. Quite frankly, that's not true at all. I'm going to say if you take a sales professional, like we've done on the screen here, and we cut them into 3 equal parts, because it is what I'll say 3 parts that make up a truly professional salesperson that performs at an incredibly high level. Product knowledge is one of them. You've got to have product knowledge. If you don't have product knowledge, you're not going to be that professional salesperson. You're not going to be that, what I'll say, successful salesperson. But also you need good selling skills. You need to be able to, what I'll say, navigate the sales process as you go through it and know where you are and to discern where you are. And that all takes a very set series of selling skills. And like anything else, you have to have the natural ability, or the more you have the natural ability, the better it's going to fit. But then you need to work on those, what I'll say, natural abilities over and over and over again, practicing and practicing and practicing to get very skilled on these different sales skills. Again, I played football in university, and I always like to say to salespeople when I'm in front of them, we practice probably 9 hours for every hour of game time. And even in that hour of game time, the amount of time that you're actually doing something on a particular play and or even what I'll say touching the ball is even less than that. But yet we were investing 9 hours a week to play 1 hour of football. You want to get really good as a sales professional, you have to practice, quote unquote, your sales skills over and over and over again until you become very skilled. So I always like to say to salespeople, invest that time. Where I'm going with that is the other is you need a confident selling attitude. You really need that mindset to, what I'll say, have that confident selling attitude where you bring that into each and every call. And that's not just born, a positive mindset is not enough. It's got to be a confident selling mindset. A lot of times people say, I need to say a positive mental attitude or a positive mindset. And then I ask, give me a definition for that. And they really struggle with the definition. So I like the term a confident selling attitude because we can get more specific with it. And where I'm going with this is if we take a top producing and a top professional and we cut them into that 3 areas, about 14% of their quote unquote success comes from product knowledge. I'll talk a little bit about that later where it is. The problem here in North America is that most companies spend over 80% of their training budget on product knowledge. They believe they have, what I'll say, a responsibility to train their salespeople on their product knowledge, and they do have that responsibility. They spend an inordinate amount of both time, money, and what I'll say resources on the product knowledge. And so salespeople get trained up the wazoo on product knowledge. They go into a sales call, as I said earlier, knowing what not to do. They don't know what to do. So they're generally speaking not doing that well on the first call. And so what do they talk about? They talk about something that they're comfortable with, which is product knowledge. And they're doing it way too early in the sales process. I'll say this for right now, and I'll throw it out. And if you want to write it down, it will certainly help you going forward. The single biggest reason for the missed sale is that the salesperson is out of alignment with the customer. And one of the biggest reasons why they're out of alignment early on in the process is they start to talk about product knowledge too early, okay? So if product knowledge is only 14% of your success, 86% of your success comes from your selling skills, which I like to refer to as your skill set, and your confident selling attitude, which I like to refer to as your mindset. So if you really want to become a top performing, and we're going to talk about performance in a little while and break that down as what that is. If you really want to become a top, what I'll say, producing and a top performing salesperson, you really want to be investing about 86% of your time, both in skill set and mindset, and about 14% of your time from a training point of view on product knowledge. And this is where it's been an interesting, what I'll say, situation and or conversation that I've had with many organizations that I've worked with across North America to really get them to understand this. Again, I don't want you to misunderstand my words. Take product knowledge away, whether from the salesperson and from training, you're not going to have a professional salesperson. Product knowledge is key. It's not as key as what we inordinately think as salespeople. And it's certainly not as key as what organizations both invest time, money, and training in from that perspective. So I like to see the ratio about 86% between skill set, mindset, and about 14% on product knowledge. Okay. Well, then what is the skill set? The skill set is your ability to analyze the sales process while it's going on, so that you know what step of the sale you're in each and every moment, and you also know what step of the sale your customer's in from that point of view. I always like to say a good professional salesperson is in command of the sales process. They're just not in obvious command, all the while the customer thinks they are. And so you're actually leading the customer through this sales process. So part of those sales skills is the ability to analyze the sales process in terms of where you are with the customer, and then lead them through it step by step where they follow. In some cases, they may even take a step themselves, again, which you need to analyze and go with it. I'd like to give this analogy. Assume for a moment that you're going in for a surgical procedure and you're lying just outside the operating room. You're just about to go in. The anesthesiologist is about to just kind of give you that kind of magical, I'll say, laughing gas or drug, and you're about to fall asleep. And as you're lying on the bed, because you've got really nothing to do and nothing to think about, you hear this conversation coming down the hall. And as that conversation gets closer, you realize it's two doctors. And these two doctors are having a conversation. And what these two doctors are talking about is how the doctor who's just about to operate on you skips steps in the surgical procedure. How do you feel? You probably want to get up off that bed and you will probably want to run away. Certainly, I know I would. Okay. Where I'm going with this is a lot of salespeople don't understand that they skip steps in the sales process, and then they don't understand why, quote unquote, they missed a sale, or in some cases, it might be the death of their sales. So that's part of what I'll say, those selling skills. And we might talk about that in one of the other sessions going forward. The next thing then is specific set of sales tools and techniques to help you navigate this sales process. One set of skills is to help you analyze where you are so you know what to do next. I like to say those are your strategy selling skills, and your tactical sales skills are these series of sales tools and techniques, so that when you're in a particular step of the sale and you want to accomplish a very specific thing, you know what tool to go grab and use that. Okay. Just by doing that alone, by nature, you'll start to build a more, what I'll say, confident selling attitude. Why? Because you'll build a familiarity with these sales tools. You'll build a familiarity with the sales process. You'll be going through it a series of times, whether that be role playing with your fellow salespeople, or role playing with, what I'll say, the business owner, or just, what I'll say, another friend or family member as well too. And as you go through that, quote unquote, familiar pattern, that just in its own self builds confidence. Okay. But the relationship is, the more I get skilled with both my ability to manage the sales process or analyze the sales process, and the more I get skilled with my sales tools and techniques, the more my confident selling attitude is going to grow. But that's only part of it, okay? Because part of it is you need to start to develop that self, what I'll say, that confident selling attitude, not only from a perspective of how to use the tools, but how, again, to carry yourself in the sales call with the individual on the other side of the desk, to where you are very much leading the customer through this process, but all the while they feel like they are, okay? And by, what I'll say, working on the sales skills and then analyzing what's going on, we become more consciously competent. And this is the way the mind works. The moment you become more consciously competent in anything, you become more self-confident. The more you become self-confident, the more you're going to expect something of yourself. And again, expectations is really a belief. It's not a want. A want's a hope. And I always like to say there is no hope in, what I'll say, the sales strategy. Hope is not a sales strategy. By building your, what I'll say, conscious competence, by using these skills more, by getting better with these skills, and understanding when to use the skills, how to use the skills, and seeing the results that come of the skills during the process, you're going to start to increase your conscious competence. Simply by doing that, it's an automatic effect that you will become more self-confident. Simply by becoming more self-confident, you will start to expect more of yourself. You'll start to believe in yourself more. You'll start to expect that you'll be more successful, either in a particular sales call with a particular customer, with a particular company, and or what I'll say, either repeat sales or brand new sales, even with respects to quote unquote, your prospecting. A lot of salespeople struggle with prospecting and they almost want to avoid it like the plague. You start to really develop those skills and that confident selling attitude, you look forward to prospecting, because generally speaking, for every 10, what I'll say, prospecting calls you're going to make, you end up starting to open up 6 or 7 to 8 new selling opportunities. And the last is, once you start to expect more of yourself, well, then you're going to perform at a higher level. And that's the key, is it's all about performance, okay? I like to say to salespeople, it's about your sales performance that leads to your sales results. So let's focus on performance, because performance comes first, not the results. And so then what does performance look like? Well, here's the performance equation, okay? Your performance is a combination of your talents that you bring to, in this case, sales, your habits that you bring to a sales career, your sales, what I'll say, job, your sales role, and the opportunity that you have in front of you within the company and or what I'll say, career that you're working with, along with the environment. All of that, what I'll say, is your performance. Let's do a little bit of math so you understand it. If we were to evaluate a sales individual on a scale of 1 to 10 in each of these 3 categories, 1 being low and 10 being high, and let's just assume for a moment that this particular individual had a 1 in talent, had a 1 in habits, and had a 1 in opportunity, 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. The individual's performance coefficient literally is 1. If we've got somebody who's a 10 in talent and a 10 in habits and a 10 in opportunity, then all of a sudden, from that point of view, the performance coefficient is 1,000. If you're a salesperson, which would you rather be, the 1 or 1,000? If you're a business owner and you're hiring salespeople, would you rather be hiring the 1 or the 1,000? Would you rather be working with the 1 or the 1,000? That's what performance is all about. And the interesting thing is, they're what I'll say, interdependent. Talent's interdependent with habits, and habits are interdependent with opportunities. Meaning, from that point of view, if I increase any one of these, I get an inordinate, what I'll say, increase in my overall performance. Simply put, again, let's do a little bit of math so I can illustrate that for you. If somebody is a 5 and a 5 and a 5, 5 times 5 is 25 times 5 is 125. If I merely, what I'll say, take somebody's habits, working with them as a coach like I do, and the habits go from a 5 to a 7, now all of a sudden, 5 times 7 is 35, and times that by 5, now you've got 175 versus 125. I've just increased the individual's performance significantly, and or I shouldn't say they have increased their performance significantly. And that's really how the performance equation works. The thing that I like personally about performance and the performance equation is, as a sales professional, I control my performance. I can control my sales performance in every situation, all the time, 24/7. I can't control the results. It's the customer who decides whether I get a result or not myself. And so even from that confident mental attitude that we were talking about, I know if I perform really well on a situation and for whatever reason, I wasn't successful to get the result, I wasn't successful to get the sale, I can still walk away with my attitude intact, knowing that I performed well, and it just might have been something else. Where if I tie everything to the result, it's almost like my quote unquote confident attitude is tied to my results. Okay. Now, the other thing is, performance leads to results. And so the more that I, what I'll say, understand my performance process, the more I can understand how to tweak it and ongoingly drive my success. I'll give you a little bit of an example with that. I've been working with this one individual at one of the local car dealers here because I do some training with some of their salespeople there. And we've been working together for about 6 months. And if you know anything about the car industry, traditionally, one, turnover is rampant. For every 10 salespeople they hire, typically they'll lose 6 within the first 6 months. They'll lose 8 within the first year. So they're constantly hiring, they're constantly churning from that point of view. The other thing about that is a lot of salespeople in the car industry literally move from one dealership to another. Again, like I said before, thinking it's going to be easier on the other side. I always like to say, again, greener on the other side, tougher to choose. So it is actually harder from that point of view. And so when I started working with the dealership, I asked them, one, my sales training is very different than what I'll say typically goes on in the automotive industry, because the automotive industry is something that, again, selling wise, they want to do to the customer instead of with the customer. And so we talked about, first of all, in terms of them embracing this philosophy, number one, and then this kind of training, which they agreed to. So we started to move ahead. And so I do a bi-weekly training with the team every 2 weeks. As a team, but then we start to work with we work with individuals one-on-one in between that. Where I'm going with that is 6 months ago, I started working with this one individual. And again, focused on performance that leads to results, not what I'll say focused on results, but focused on performance that leads to results. And when we first started working together, this individual was selling, generally speaking, between 3 to 4, 4 to 5 cars a month. 3 to 4 fortified cars a month is enough to keep the lights on. It's enough to keep you coming back month over month, but it's certainly not enough to, what I'll say, raise a family on or have a career on. I asked for one thing. I asked for his commitment to work at this, which he said yes. And where I'm going with that is 6 months later, just this past month in July, because I just had the conversation with him yesterday, he actually ended up selling 22 cars, okay? That's an increase of over 400% in his sales results. Why? Because he focused on performance. So let's take a look at it. First of all, we're going to talk about talent. Your talent gets split into two: inherent talent and trainable talent. And so when you're starting to look at this from a sales point of view, what are the inherent talents that you have that align with a sales career? You've got to be good at having a conversation. You've got to be good at meeting people from that point of view. You've got to be a really good, what I'll say, and really observant from that point of view. Okay. You've got to be reasonably analytical from that perspective as well too. And you've got to be able to discern what's going on. Those are some of what I'll say the inherent talents from that perspective. And then a whole bunch of trainable so that you now get skilled on what you're doing. There's training around handling objections. There's training around closing skills. There's training around presentation skills. There's training around, even how to give a good compliment. All of those are what I'll say trainable. And when you apply the effort to them, now you become highly skilled. So the whole, what I'll say, thing that we want to really focus on talent is, does the individual have the inherent talent? And then with training, you're going to get tremendous growth out of it. I like to use the example there. Again, played football growing up. I'm pretty inherently, what I'll say, talented when it comes to athletics. You give me 6 hours of training in tennis, I can probably become a pretty good tennis player. Having said that, I don't like tennis, would never play tennis, so I would never want to go invest those 6 hours. On the other side, I love music, would love to learn how to play the saxophone. I'm not musically talented. I don't have the inherent talent to play a musical instrument. You give me the same 6 hours of training, yes, I will become a better saxophone player because that's what I would have always loved to play. And I might do that just as a hobby, but I would never get the same amount of growth out of those 6 hours as the 6 hours invested in tennis. So again, understanding where my talents are and investing in those areas will really grow my skill set, which will help me grow my mindset. The other is habits. Habit of thought, that's an attitude. Habit of behavior, that's effort. And so what are the habits? What are the success habits that you're bringing each and every day to your sales career, to your sales opportunities, because you start to look at what are the success habits. And this is where I challenge salespeople all the time. You really only need about five or six key success habits that you do every day. If you look at top, again, performing salespeople that are highly successful and producing a lot of results because they're performing well, they typically have five or six habits that they do each and every day. Start to understand what those are, and possibly in another conversation, or if you wanted to go further, we could have some conversation there. Because the key thing about what I'll say talent is, can the individual do the job? Can you do the job? Do you have the talent and the skill sets to do the job? The key thing around habits is, will you do the job? And this is where, again, if I'm a business owner or if I'm working with one of my business owners, I always say to a business owner, I'd rather have somebody with A, effort and attitude, and B, talents, than somebody who has A, talents, and B, effort and attitude. Okay, because what comes first? The effort comes first. Actually, the attitude comes first. If we've got the good attitude, then we're going to have the good effort. If we've got the good attitude, good effort, now we can apply that good effort and good attitude to learning the skill sets that we talked about on the previous page, and really drive, I'll say, performance forward. Because, and we'll get into a moment, but it really talks about responsibility. When we're talking about opportunity, that goes to, do they fit? Do you fit in the environment that you're working in? Do you fit with the career, the job that you're in? Are you in the right industry? Are you working for the right company in the right industry? And are you doing the right, what I'll say, kind of sales role that fits back to your efforts and attitudes and fits back to your talent? It might be selling a service like insurance. Some people are very good at selling something that's intangible, like a service, whether that be, again, insurance, whether that be weight loss, whether that be legal fees or legal services, or a whole bunch of services. Again, Give to Get is a service-based company. So the people need to be comfortable selling, quote unquote, in our case, referring the Give to Get program, because it really is a service. It's not a product. Other people are more comfortable selling what I'll say tangible products from that point of view. But I'll say this too. The laws of selling really don't change from one or the other. So as you get more comfortable with the laws of selling, you'll get comfortable on both. But you have to start to ask yourself, do you fit? The other side of it, because now we start to drive it. Okay, and what I mean by driving it is, let's just assume across the board, somebody's a 7, a 7, and a 7. What are you doing to get your talent to a 7.5? What are you doing to get your habits to a 7.5? What are you doing to get your opportunity, your environment, the job, the way you go about it to 7.5? Because those simple little increments each and every time really drive performance to an incredibly, what I'll say, high level. That individual that I was talking about just the other day, we're even getting down to what music he plays for himself when he's on the way to the dealership. Also, to his appointments. He, as a sales professional, you're in charge of your schedule. Nobody else is. Don't allow other people to schedule things onto your schedule. You own that schedule, so you get to set it up the way you want to set it up to maximize your success. And where I was going here, the fellow's name is Jesse. We came to the determination for Jesse that he always wants to be at the dealership a half an hour before he has his first appointment of the day, because that allows him to get his mindset right. That allows him to do some practicing on his skill set so that he's got both of those really honed in, really dialed in, just like he's about to go out and perform like an athlete, like an entertainer, so that he can be more successful in that call. And then the other is, he always wants to have minimally 20 minutes in between one, what I'll say, appointment and the other, so he can, quote unquote, debrief on the first one and get ready for the next one. In the automotive industry and in a lot of retail businesses and quite a number of businesses, they have what they call ups, people walking through the door. In a sense, that's a lead. A lot of companies generate their leads for their salespeople. Another one of my customers that sells trailers, all different kinds of trailers. They actually, what I'll say, develop anywhere from 20 to 30 leads a month for their salespeople. And I'm saying you're spoiling the salespeople, because part of the salesperson's job is to go get those leads. where I'm going with this with Jesse is now those leads that come through the door, Jesse doesn't want them because he's now started to understand how to do his own prospecting by taking responsibility from that. And he finds that he has a better quality lead coming in on an appointment than the ones just walking through the door that he really doesn't know anything about. And he hasn't started to develop the relationship with them before they've come to the business. So where I'm going with this is it talks about what is your responsibility when it comes to performance, the performance equation, and your performance as a sales professional that leads to quote unquote sales results. Okay. So when it comes to talent, it's a shared responsibility between you and the company. Company's got to train you from that point of view. Your job is to take the training so you understand how to do it their way. This is where product knowledge comes in because the company is supposed to train you on product knowledge. And so the company trains you on product knowledge. You learn about the product knowledge in terms of how to deliver it, what to say, what are the key features of the product and or service that you're selling. Companies also got a responsibility though to train you on selling, how they want you to sell. What are the sales tools and techniques that they want you to use? What's the sales process that they want you to use? That's all a shared responsibility for the company to train you, for you to understand it and go ahead, okay? But also from that perspective, it's your responsibility to ongoingly, what I'll say, develop your sales talent and your sales skills as well too. A lot of times prior to COVID, when I was in front of a sales room, probably about 100 salespeople, I'd put up my hand and I'd say, how many people here consider themselves a professional salesperson? And literally I would get all the hands going up in the air. I'd say, okay, who here in the last year has taken a sales course on their own, read a sales book on their own, done some role playing on their own, crafted out their presentation and asked somebody to practice it with them on their own? And about quote unquote 90% of the hands go down. Very few salespeople really start to develop this on their own. If you want to be professional, you've got to take responsibility for driving your talent as well too. On the opportunity side, again, it's a shared responsibility. Company sets the culture, company sets the core values, company sets the work environment from that point of view. Company gives you a job description around what the expectations are for what you do to earn your income from that perspective as well too. Your job to fit in, your job to understand those core values, your job to understand the culture, your job to understand what the role it is that you do, and then make it dynamically your own. How to take the sales environment and tailor it so that it's a great environment to yourself. How to take those, what I'll say, culture and turn the culture into your favor and develop your own culture within the culture. How to take the role and responsibilities that are outlined in that job description and make them your own so that you put your own, what I'll say, flair on it. That's what I'll say, a shared responsibility. The key thing though is when it comes to effort and attitude, 100% on you. It's your effort and attitude. It's nobody else's. You have to bring your best effort each and every day. And the more you do that, and the more you drive that to a higher level, the more it's going to have a spillover effect, both on the opportunity piece and the talent piece. And this is where I like to cite Tom Brady, because Tom Brady, for the people who don't know Tom Brady's an NFL quarterback. He's had a tremendous career, probably the best or most outstanding, what I'll say, quarterback ever to play in the NFL. Why? Because he's what I like to call a performance junkie. He's addicted to increasing his performance. I like to say the difference with Tom Brady is he's in pursuit of perfection. He's not a perfectionist. He's always working hard to get better. He's always working to improve his ability. He's always working to improve his talent. He's always working to improve his habits. He's always improving to, what I'll say, improve his routine. He's always very consciously about crafting an environment that is built for him, that's built for his success. Because when you do that, it makes selling a whole lot easier from that point of view. Why? Because you start to own your performance. And the more you start to own your performance, the more you get away from what I call coaxing, because a lot of salespeople try to sell through coaxing their clients, which isn't acceptable. And you start to get into, a whole lot more of what I'll say coaching. And that's what I mean by working with your prospects instead of working what I'll say or selling with your prospects in terms of selling to your prospect. That's good professional selling. On the end of the presentation there, well, I'll go back here for just a second. When you really start to drive your talent, your effort and attitude, and your environment and your job description through the performance equation, these two pieces right here really start to gel together as one. And that's where 86% of your success is going to come from. The more you drive your selling skills, the more you're going to drive your confident selling attitude. Okay. I'm going to stop that. We'll go back to sharing and we'll go to a gallery view there and we'll pin myself there. So that's our session for today. You'll be up on the website probably within the next few hours. By all means, have a look at it. And again, everybody have a wonderful weekend with their family. Armida will be back with us next week. Take care. Bye-bye.